Hello and welcome to the start of Project Posterity. My name's Philip and this is the first episode entitled Early Life, in which we discuss Granny's earliest memories, her childhood, growing up in the Second World War, her time as a nurse in London and the first time she met Grandpa. So sit back, relax and enjoy the episode. This is the start of Project Posterity, and the aim of this is just to really record an oral history of Granny Devon's life, and the plan is to have 4 sessions or 4 episodes, each covering sort of different chapters of Granny's life. The first one, which is this session that we're recording on Sunday the 27th of June 2021, we've entitled very creatively Childhood. We might think of a new name for that, but this is roughly a 23-year period from 1928 to 1951. Although I think we're going to start with a little bit of family background or sort of family genealogy. And we've got Mum here for the first one, and then the second episode is roughly marriage and family life. This is the longest sort of period, so this is a 30-year stretch from 1952 to 1982, and we hope to have David, Granny's eldest son, with us for that session. And session 3 is Under Cleve Life with Grandpa, and that's a 20-year period from 1982 to 2002, and we hope to have Deirdre with us. And the 4th session we've called Life Post Grandpa, which is currently a 19-year period from 2002 to this year, 2021. And we hope to have Keith with us in person for that session. So that's roughly where we're going. And I think, we'll start with the first one. We'll kick off with childhood. Maybe Granny, do you want to say hello? Mum, do you want to say hello?
Hello. I thought I would start with giving a very brief family tree.
Great. And Mum?
Hello, this is Philip's mum, Alison. I'm going to be joining the conversation.
Very formal start from Mum there. Very good. So let's hear sort of the genealogy.
On my mother's side, she came from the Fever family. That's Feaver. And before that, she was Eyre. And on my father's side, my father was William Hodgson, and his mother was a Thornbury, Fanny Georgina Thornbury, spelled B-E-R-Y, as opposed to several place names which are spelled P-U-R-Y. And you have to look out for that on any official papers. As far as I know, and I have got a fair bit of history on it, but for the purposes of this, what we're doing now, the fever sprang originally from the Huguenots in France. You can look up all about the Huguenots. They came in the 1600s over to the Channel Islands to start with, and then mainly to Dorset. The Hodgsons came, as far as we know, from up north, in the northwest generally. And as far as we know, they were sheep farmers of some sort, but we have very little history, unfortunately, on the Hodgsons. If you look up in the ancestry on the internet, you find that there are any number of Hodgsons. There are any number of William Hodgsons, which Grandpa was. So it's very difficult to sort that out. But for some reason or other, they ended up in South London.
Were these, Granny, were they in Lancaster stealing sheep?
It was Lancashire.
Lancashire?
Yes, as far as we know, they were Lancashire. Yes.
And were they stealing sheep? Or
Well,
did
I
I
think
just
there
imagine?
are a lot of people who claimed to be sheep stealers, but that's the sort of, the family, what the family always produced. But I don't think there's very much evidence of that. And my grandmother's side, she was a Thornbury, very big family, mostly professionals, lawyers, solicitors, that sort of background. My grandfather, William, was an accountant to a printing firm in Fleet Street, and that's all we really know about him. I don't know how he got there. Both families at the time that we're talking about at the moment, or before that, before we were born, lived in Annerley, South London, and I think they both went to the same church, and that was how my grandmother met my grandfather, I assume.
Okay, where's Annerley?
Annerley is sort of South Norwood, just near the Crystal Palace, that sort of area.
Okay, is it far from Purley?
As the crow flies, no, but it's Purley is, well, put it the other way around, Annerley is very much further into London.
Okay.
Purley is used to be quite a way out. Croydon, where I was born, was a separate identity, had a separate identity, but it did come under the auspices of the Greater London Council in my time, much to the indignation of everybody. It sort of lost its character a bit. So that's where we came from. Then my mother obviously married my father and became Dorothy Edith Hodgson. And my father was Alan Thornbury Hodgson. Alan and Dorothy, known as Dot, had Elaine, then myself, and then Elizabeth. So there we are. And we all lived in a house called Trebarwith, Woodbury Close in Addiscombe, which was a suburb of Croydon at that time, which my Fever grandfather built for them as a wedding present.
Yeah, did he? I didn't know that.
Oh, they were very lucky.
Right.
It was a lovely house. We were very privileged. A lovely big garden, and Woodbury Close was literally a close with just 13 houses, and all the children used to play together in that sort of grass ring at the top of the close. So it was, we were very lucky.
When you say that your grandfather, is that right, Fever, built it? Do you mean he paid?
Well, he paid.
He paid for it.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sure he didn't build it with his own hands.
Yeah.
But yes, he gave it to them as a wedding gift.
With money from his business, is that right?
Well, presumably.
Yeah.
I don't know. He was very well off. One regarded a millionaire with awe in those days, and we were told that he was a millionaire, but I don't have any proof of that particularly. But I knew that he was very well off and gave a lot of money to charity and to helping to build the Penn's Congregational Church, where all the family, who moved over to both sides of the family. And the other point I should make, which added to our lovely childhood really, was that we were surrounded by relatives of both families. And as far as we know as children, you pick up atmosphere as you're a child. So they got on very well. So it was lovely, and very often the families would like to go on holidays, and so we really knew them. So that's where I've come from.
It's good to hear. Were you close to your grandparents? I mean, obviously, I'm your grandchild. I feel like we have quite a close relationship.
Yes, they weren't near enough to pop in, but they were near enough to get a bus to Granny Fever, who lived, it's fairly near the Crystal Palace, where she lived. My others, the Hodgsons, lived at Shortlands in Bromley.
Oh, yes.
And that wasn't so easy to get to, but we used to go to Sunday lunch quite often in the car. We'd all be at the church in the morning at Penge, and then we would go back to them for Sunday lunch.
Didn't your grandparents have a very large house they used to do a lot of entertaining in?
The Phoebe side, my grandmother, Phoebe, before he died when he was, I think, 56.
Right. Okay.
They had a huge mansion-type house with an enormous garden, which in those days ended in a pig farm, but now is a real wayside.
Oh, right.
Yeah. It seemed huge because we were small.
Yeah.
He was quite large.
You've got pictures of those.
Yeah, and the steamways. Yeah, that's right. That's another photographic album. I got to look out all the pictures of this gorgeous garden, a rather ugly house, but it was very big.
Mm-hmm.
Then my grandfather died. My grandmother built a house in Norwood, again, just below Crystal Palace.
Oh, right.
Have I seen this house on film? Was there sort of maybe your grandfather with a dog? Was that completely different?
It wouldn't have been there because it was. But when he died, you see, I think it was 56 before any ordinary person would have had a cine camera.
Okay.
Maybe it was your parents. Maybe it was your parents' house or something.
I don't know. There's a picture of him on the desk there. Are you thinking of that where he's with a dog? With Elizabeth's dog.
Okay.
You're thinking of the old Cine film?
Yes, I'm thinking of the old cine.
Yeah.
Is that different?
Dog would have come into. We had a little dog, Titus.
Okay.
But
That's cool.
But generally speaking, we weren't a terribly doggy family.
Oh,
yeah.
Was it normal to have a car back then? You said they had a car.
My father needed a car for his business because he was working. He was a director of the Thornbury family firm, which made industrial paint.
Oh yes, okay.
And he was the I don't know what you call him, sort of sales director or something, and he used to travel a lot.
Yeah.
And it was said that he was very successful in his job because he hardly ever said anything. So his customer didn't quite know. Thought they'd better say yes, I think. This was said at my father's 60th retirement, 65th retirement party. That my Thornbury cousin, who was by then director of this firm, made a speech, obviously, and mentioned that he was one of the most successful salespeople because he said very little. People didn't feel put off by his sales patter.
no.
So, yes. Yes, so this was another explanation of why the families all lived together, because I don't know the history of how they got the Thornbury firm going, and it wasn't called Thornbury, it was...
This is the painting firm, right?
Yeah, it was called Griffiths Brothers. So I don't know the early history of that, but the Thornburys were running it when we were children, and my father came out of the army after the Great War. He was ill for a while, and then he was taken into the firm to get him going.
Okay.
And he stayed there forever.
Mm.
And what sort of paint was it? Sort of industrial paint, or was it sort of
Yes, industrial paint, things like bridges, gasworks.
Okay.
And I can remember the day when they got the contract
Yes. Yeah.
to paint the fourth bridge because you never finished.
Right.
What? As in, once you finish painting, you have to go back to the beginning.
So lost. Go back to the beginning again.
Oh.
So that was a great day.
Wow. Okay. So serious paint. So they weren't selling sort of tins of paint. It was
No. It was serious paint.
Yeah.
And at one stage of my life, after I left school and hadn't at that time gone into nursing, I used to go with him on his rounds because I had done a shorthand typing course, and it was quite interesting. Then in the evening, I'd type up what he'd done during the day, and we go around gasworks and all these sort of industrial places.
Wow. Well, so you just went with him in the car and saw all this different.
Once he'd done his selling, he dictated to me in the car.
Oh, right.
I quite enjoyed that.
Did it change? So when sort of the Second World War came along, did they have to repurpose what they were doing for sort of military use, or did they carry on?
No, I don't think they did.
No.
Again, he was a fairly silent man. We didn't learn an awful lot. But I can't remember that particular thing coming up at all.
Yeah.
But
I guess they were still painting the Forth Bridge.
he used to take us up on a Saturday morning to the works, as it was called, and to see the paints being mixed. Great big vats.
Right.
And it's quite interesting.
Did he smell of paint? Because paint has a strong smell.
You probably smell of turps or something. I don't know. I don't remember that particularly.
No, I don't remember him ever smelling it.
Presumably, we go on now to schooling.
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking maybe go back to the beginning. So you're born, 1928?
28, yeah.
In August?
Yeah.
Yes, just checking or remember that correctly.
Yeah.
And what's your kind of earliest memory? I imagine you might have some memories before school. I don't.
Well, I suppose my earliest memory was really playing with the other children of the close, particularly with Auntie Barbara.
Yes.
And Graham, who Alison knows quite well, or knew quite well. And her family were much more open to young children, neighbours' children going into their house than my family were. So we were up in Barbara's house quite a bit.
Barbara was quite a free spirit, wasn't she?
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you remember she came down to the farm once? When she was older, she came. Was it for one Christmas? She came to visit you.
Yes, she did.
Vaguely. Who's Barbara again? Sorry, just remind me. Barbara.
Barbara Calcutt. She and her brother Graham used to play with really me and my younger sister rather more than they.
Okay.
And we lost contact during the war because we were both evacuated. And then after the war, she went to work in the Foreign Office in Paris, so we lost contact for a bit then, but
Oh, wow.
not too much. And then she came into my life again when we asked her to be David's godmother.
Okay.
Really, because I'd known her such a long time. And then from then on, we always, we were very much in contact. And she married a barrister, David Calcutt, and lived in chambers in London.
Okay, yeah, this is ringing bells. Okay,
Yeah.
so she's just good family friend.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, very long standing.
Yeah. Did she pass away recently? Or she's still around?
About 5 years.
I'll say about 5 years.
Yeah. She was the one when they were taking her up to the hospital and the ambulance broke down on the motorway and they had to put her on the hard shoulder or something and wait for another ambulance.
Oh, no.
Yes, that's right. But she had to wait on the hard shoulder when she was really. Wasn't she been taken up to a nursing home near her brother?
Yeah, she was dying.
Yeah, she was very ill.
Is this would she often call you and it'd be a very long conversation?
Yeah.
Speaking diplomatically, I remember being on the farm.
Yeah.
You taking those calls.
Yeah.
Oh.
But she was a very intelligent, amusing,
quite a
girl.
Yeah. Okay, so she was on that close of 13 houses. And that's how you first met her.
Yeah, that's right. We were childhood friends and stayed friends until she died, which is nice.
Okay, so that's some of your first memories of playing with her.
I think that would be right. Yeah. I have just thought of one very much earlier memory.
Okay.
This isn't terribly interesting, but I ran away when I was 4.
Yeah, really?
We were staying on holiday in Swanage, and I was fed up. I think there were a lot of relatives there, and I was fed up. So I walked down to the front and just sat on a seat, and a lady came and sat next to me. She said, "Hello, little girl. Are you all alone?" I said, "Yes." and she had a tube of fruit pastels in her bag. So she gave me a fruit pastel, at which time I could see a very angry-looking father approaching me. But that is, I think, when I was 4, is the earliest memory I got.
Right.
So it's what, 1932? Yeah. Should we think about school?
School, most of us went to Croydon High School,
Okay.
which is a GPDST, and they're still functioning. That's to say that it was a trust. So the fees were lower than a private school, but obviously there were fees as opposed to a...
Okay, was it state school? Okay.
It was very good. It was sort of grammar school standard. But I was there until war broke out. And then I think the main school evacuated, but we didn't go with them. And when we jumping a bit, when we all got back to Croydon again and everything settled down, my parents didn't send me back there, much to my disappointment. And neither did they send Elaine back there. But I'm diversing a bit. We ended up in a rather, it wasn't second rate, but it was an unambitious little dame school.
Okay.
Which there's lots of history to that, which is not really appropriate at this moment.
Yeah, well, sure.
And then, because we were evacuated, we came back from evacuation after a few months. I think we went in September and came back about November because nothing was happening. And then things did begin to happen. They started to bomb. We bombed Croydon Airport, started bombing London and so on. So we all went back again, we evacuated again for over a year. And when we finally came back, we were sent to this school that was run by a friend of my parents.
That was the one near Kate's old school, was it? Yeah. Oxted. No, okay, that's later.
In Beckenham.
Oh, in Beckenham, okay.
And the reason we went to this school, which was called Woodbrook,
Right.
was because when we were evacuated, the whole family, all those who wanted to be evacuated, all went down to Hartfield in Sussex to an empty school. It had been an open-air school for tuberculous children, I think, and they had all been dispersed. The school was empty, and the school had been run and owned by a rather cranky old lady who was a friend of my grandmother Hodgson. It was vegetarian, which was not fully understood in those days anyway.
Right.
And these children used to have a half an hour break in the morning with no clothes on, whatever the weather.
What, outside?
Yes. And because of that, they had open dormitories. There were flaps that came down, so that there was a half wall which was open to the weather, really, but with flaps that came down in the worst of the weather. Central heating pipes go along the back of the cubicles, it's true, but it was all divided into cubicles, and so that when the school was empty and we were evacuated down there, we had to sleep in these open dormitories. With it. There was a big house attached to these buildings where the rest of the family stayed, and we took our little Welsh maid, Megan.
Oh, right.
Okay. And it was a very strange time. And the business, my father's business, was evacuated to about 6 miles away. So he was fairly near, but he stayed resident there in the house where the business had gone to, or the, I don't know what sort of buildings they were, and he would come to us at the weekend.
Oh, I see.
So that the people who weren't at school lived in this big house, and the dormitory and the classrooms were offshoots of the big house.
Mm-hmm.
So we took that over, and then that was the first evacuation. And then we went back to Croydon and things started happening. So the whole family uprooted themselves again and went back to this school, to an empty school. By this time, My mother had got to know, I think through the church, another couple of ladies who ran a school in Beckenham.
Okay.
And they were invited to come down and join us. So we then were attached to this school called Woodbrook, but it was evacuated.
I see.
And it's quite confusing in a way, but then when things calmed down again and it was getting a bit difficult, everybody decided to just go back home and see what happened.
What was that school with the like open air dormitories? Was that in the Ashdown Forest?
Yeah.
Because I remember you telling me that you used to play for hours in the forest with Elaine, and that's where your love of the countryside.
Yes. I'll come to that now, if you like, but before we go back to Croydon.
Right.
It was absolute bliss.
Yeah.
Ashdown Forest was completely wild. It had been a forest. It was one of the old royal forests, I think, but most of the trees are gone. So it was lots of different copses and streams and bare hills, a bit dull in a way, not quite so bleak. And because all our family were resident down there, but the school itself, Woodbrook, went back home for their school holidays, which seemed a bit ridiculous, but they did. Elaine and myself, my younger sister was too young to join us, teamed up with another family who had joined us in this school. They lived actually on Ashdown Forest. And we were left to ourselves going through the school holidays. We roamed and built, built dens. Dens, yeah, that's right. And generally sort of led an Arthur Ransom type life. Does that mean anything to you?
Was there a river going?
Right, so it's the
building bridges.
Yeah, that's right.
Going in the
wading up through thick undergrowth, up through the river, and just everything you do at that age when you're not supervised by adults.
Yeah,
and it was just bliss. And the result of that was that Elaine and I felt that we just didn't want to go and live in a town again. Which is what I'm coming to, really. To go back to Croydon, and it broke our hearts, really. To go back to Croydon, and we lived in a very nice area. We were totally spoiled, really. Anyway, so we had learned a lot. Learned to be self-sufficient doing all this, and then we went on during the term time at ordinary school work. Then we all decided to go back home, but instead of sending Elaine and I back to Croydon High School, they sent us to Woodbrook in Beckenham to join the school again. And that, again, it was not too bad up to what was then school certificate standard.
Was that sort of when you're 16, GCSEs?
Sort of 15 on, yeah.
Okay.
Yes. But the thing about that was that the Blitz had started by then. But we decided, the family decided not to uproot everybody yet again and go away. We just endure it. But what that meant was that Elaine and I had to get ourselves to school in Beckenham, which then was quite a way because it wasn't countryside, but there were woods and fields, but believe it or not, between Croydon and Beckenham.
Okay.
And most of the time we used to cycle. Sometimes we go on the bus. And sometimes my fever uncle used to give us a lift in the car on his way up to London for some reason, which I forget now. But at that time, there was always a dog fight, as we call them, when the planes were fighting each other at 8 o'clock in the morning.
Were they?
And that was the sort of time that we would be cycling. So we'd be going to cycle to school, but this dog fight going on overhead, which was thrilling.
Right.
Yeah, it wasn't scary?
A pleasant scariness.
Okay, like excitement.
Yeah, that's right.
It was danger, but far off.
Yes.
Yeah.
Did you see any planes come down?
didn't see them coming down, but I did used to stop on our bike and look up
Right.
to see them fighting.
Right.
Did you see the flak, or were they shooting up at them?
No, I'm not really quite sure why. It was most of the road where we could see what was going on was actually a sewage farm. It was lots of fields, and it may be that the guns weren't placed there because of that. I don't really know. But then the main area was these fields on one side and a sort of copse on the other, and in this copse there was an air raid shelter. But it was one that was so sort of isolated that no one ever used it. But my parents said, you must go in there if the flag is falling around you, you must take shelter. But we were too frightened because it was dark and wet and we thought there might be some Germans. So we would cycle on through the bullets flying. Not quite like that. It was. It was dangerous.
Yeah.
And I cannot think how worried my parents must have been at the thought of us doing this.
Yeah.
Anyway, they hid it very well. And nothing happened to us particularly, except that one day there was an army lorry parked. And I don't know why. I think there were 2 or 3. There was a little convoy, actually, of lorries all parked up just along in front of us. And Elaine wasn't looking where she was going. She was probably looking at the sky. And went into the back of one of these lorries. And she didn't really hurt herself a lot, but she was a bit stunned. And she was really delighted because the soldiers picked her up and put them in the back of the lorry and took her along to the hospital. So that was a sort of little side event, which we neither of us ever forgot.
Right.
What age would you have been?
I would have been about 14.
Okay.
She was 16.
Okay, Elaine's 2 years old.
She was 2 years older.
Yeah.
Yeah, as it worked out, I think she would have been, it was in March. I'm not quite sure how that worked out, but she would have been an old 15 or young 16.
Yeah.
I can't remember.
And I guess the people in the army trucks wouldn't have been that much older, would they, I'd imagine?
No, you're probably right. So, yeah, so that was a fair bit of excitement. And then the real blitz started after that, the bombing rather than the aerial fighting and that. And I can only remember being frightened once. A small bomb did land in the close, which caused great excitement, of course, but it didn't do any damage except bring one of our windows out. And then when the war had sort of quietened down in our area a bit anyway, and Elaine rebelled at having been at this school where she felt she wasn't learning enough. And she didn't like the lady who ran it anyway. And she called it a rubbish school. I think she was probably right. And she and I decided between us that we didn't really want to be there any longer. So there was a session with my parents. I can remember now sitting on the dining room table, swinging my legs in embarrassment. I was a bit of a coward. I didn't really support her verbally, though I did mentally. Well, Elaine said to them she didn't want to be at that school any longer. Would they please remove her? And so they sent her to boarding school in Limpsfield.
No, right, that's the one.
That's where we were, where Kate used to go to school.
That's right. Not far from Oxford.
And it was musically orientated, as it were, and it suited her very well. But then, of course, that left me feeling really rather jealous. I was left in this rubbish school. And meanwhile, they'd sent our younger sister, Elizabeth, back to Croydon High. Or she didn't, she was too young to start before, sent her to Croydon High. I couldn't see the logic of that at all. Anyway, I thought, well, if I'm not to go to Croydon High, I'll go to join Elaine.
Yeah.
So I did my little protest, and they sent me up at the school as well. Yeah.
Did you figure out why, or do you know why they moved you when you came back from the evacuation? You said, done that sort of fun time in the sort of forest. Why did they not send you back to Croydon High?
I don't know.
You don't know?
Yeah, I've never known.
Maybe it's because that lady was their friend and they felt...
I think that was probably, they felt they were supporting her or something at a cost to us.
Yeah. Right.
Anyway, that was it. So there was both of us there at boarding school, and my sister at Croydon High, her younger sister, and life went along fairly quietly once we were all settled.
Was that better, that school?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Not, I mean, don't forget that in those days, girls didn't particularly go to university. There was no definite aim for everybody to either go to college or some sort of further education in a university. So you hadn't got the same sort of ambition, except that Elaine knew she wanted to go to the Academy of Music. And my mother had also been to the Academy, and so had my female grandmother.
What was the name of the school? It was something Manor, wasn't it?
The Manor House.
It's the Manor House. It's still, the building's still there, isn't it? But we went to visit, did we drive there and look at the outside?
We probably did. And
Yeah.
so Alan and Alice went and had a look and took photos of
did
it
they?
for me.
Okay. Right.
And
I've actually got an old little prospectus you gave in Manor.
yeah, that's right. Yes, I've got one too. Yeah. But that was in the country,
Yeah.
so at the bottom of the North Downs. So yes, that was lovely.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because, back in the country again, it was lovely.
You must have just been there for a few years then, if Elaine kind of moved when she was 15,
I was
16.
there for 3 years.
Okay.
Left when I was 17.
Right.
And
So Elaine wasn't there for long then?
it's,
Couple of years.
the dates are a bit rough. Yeah, I think I know what it was. It's come back to me now. Shamefully, I was moved down.
Oh, I see.
I don't know why I forgot that.
It's good to suppress. Good to suppress that.
I blamed it on our rubbish school, you see.
Right.
I got there and I found that the people of my age were learning a lot more. I had learned a lot more than I had.
Oh, I see.
And they knew how to work and I didn't.
Right.
So after 2 terms, they moved me down and it was so humiliating. I worked like a nigger then on.
Wow.
Yeah. So that was the end of our education, really.
Can I quickly just ask you about the evacuation stuff, just to clarify? So I didn't realise this. You were evacuated twice before the Blitz, is that right?
Yeah.
Just when at the outbreak of war, just for fear that...
Yeah, so first of all, the outbreak of war, which was a very short one.
Yeah.
It was a sort of reaction.
Okay, just fearing the worst, evacuate everyone.
Right, yeah.
And how long was that, week?
Probably a couple of months, something like that. I
Okay.
don't remember exactly.
And then back to Croydon.
And then the back through the winter of 41, which was very hard, but suited us because the snow covered all our dens, so we had igloos. And it must have been for about, I don't know, 9 months or a year. I don't remember exactly when we came back, but in time for, obviously, when things really started happening.
Right, and then you evacuated again,
Yeah.
but not because of the Blitz. And they,
Because of the aerial
the sort of dogfights.
dogfights still.
Okay. But not they hadn't started bombing London.
No, I think that followed on
But you were in London for the Blitz.
in Croydon, yeah.
In Croydon, okay.
Yeah.
So see, I just assumed that you evacuated
No,
Blitz, but you
we were there through the Blitz and then through the... I was still at school when the doodlebugs...
Oh, yeah.
Oh, these are the sort of V1, V2 rockets.
Yeah,
Is that right?
well, they came after the doodlebugs. I left school in the summer term after the doodlebugs started. They were going over the school, they had just started to go over the school on their way into London. So I experienced them down there and then came home and experienced them at home.
Right.
And we soon got used to the drill. But if you hear an engine, a doodlebug engine, if it comes right over you, you're fine.
Yeah.
Because it's going to glide to the ground and not come straight down.
Yeah.
So it could be a little frightening at times, but generally speaking, you knew what to do.
Mm.
and I was given strict instructions that if I was out and a doodle bug came, I must go into the nearest house.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
I only did it once and never again because they didn't really want me there.
Do you panic when the engine cuts out?
Yeah.
Is that right? When you
Yeah,
can't hear
sorry.
anything?
Yes, when the engine cuts out, it's not going to go like that. It's going to drift down.
So
like
the
that,
glide.
late.
Okay. Right.
And then that's it. After that came the rockets, which we didn't like because you couldn't hear them coming.
Now these are the V1, V2 rockets, and they're pretty big, aren't they? I've seen them in the Imperial War Museum.
It is huge damage.
Yeah.
And we didn't like those.
Okay, so where did we get to? I feel like I took us briefly back to the evacuation and the Blitz. Did we? I think we just were coming up to the end of your schooling. Was that right?
That's right.
So maybe.
So I left school when I was 17, and my mother didn't know what to do with me, and we didn't have anything like career guidance or anything. Nothing like that.
I'm not sure how useful some of these career.
No, I think I'm sure you're right. I hadn't been to a school where they taught science, but I did love reading, and I thought I might like to be a librarian, but I just wasn't sure. It didn't seem, my parents didn't seem able to find out anything, and I didn't seem to know myself how to start finding out anything. So I drifted a bit, just for a little while, and then my mother said, I've got a friend who works in Beckenham Hospital. She said, if you like, you can be a volunteer telephone operator.
Okay.
So I used to cycle to Beckenham Hospital, and I loved that. Even though you've got really quite frightening things like I used to mostly man them during the lunch hour, when everybody else was gone off for an hour. And this lady rang up from Beckenham railway station, saying a friend had collapsed on the platform. Oh. What should she do? To my surprise, I remained quite cool and calm, and arranged for an ambulance. All right, there, and I told whoever I'm supposed to tell, to expect this case. And I felt really proud of myself. I was congratulated on keeping my head. And,
So you were the equivalent of like a 999 operator.
Yeah.
Is that right? But
yes.
back in those days, did 999 exist, or did you call the hospital, or?
I think it probably did exist.
Yeah.
I can't be sure.
Okay, and they would have directed them to you potentially.
Yes, I knew enough to know that I should call an ambulance, and that they would sort it out. And so, yeah.
Okay, and was it hard? Because you see in the films they're sort of moving. Did you have to do that sort of moving in and out?
Yeah, that's right. Putting little bloods in holes.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. I must have been taught it, obviously. And then I used to do other odd jobs like taking flowers to the patients that have been delivered, and running messages to them. So errand and go. And did enjoy that. And then...
so that was your first job?
Yeah, well, I couldn't get paid. It's the first thing I did in the big world.
Working world, yeah.
Yes. What else did I do? I had had an interview at UCH in London for nursing, and they accepted me for some reason. I didn't understand quite why, because although I did have quite good results from my exams, didn't think I was a terribly promising candidate. Anyway, they did. I found out later, actually, that my mother was a friend of one of the nurses there. Right. So the lady in charge of the private wing, through the church, Right. But anyway, so I was due to start there January the 6th the next year. And I think I did this hospital job until about November, something like that. I can't remember how I filled in the rest of the time, but anyway. So then I went off on January 6th to London.
You were 18?
18.
Yeah, okay.
We had to have a trunk with all our belongings in. We lived for the first 6 weeks in the nurse's home. So we took a trunk of clothes, and the thing was how I was to get there with my trunk. So then I went on a train. In those days, you could take your trunk and give it to the guard. He put it in the luggage compartment. Guard saw me off the train, made sure I got my right trunk when I got up to London, and then I got a taxi. Arrived at the nurse's home, which was in a grim place. And it's
Where was it? Sort of.
it's in just off Tottenham Court Road, Gower Street.
Okay. Oh, Gower Street. Okay. Oh, so this was. So yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Right next to. Did you say UCH, University College Hospital? Yes.
Yeah. Yes, it was. And I got there, and I got out of the taxi, got the man to take my trunk in, and suddenly realised the taxi had gone, and I'd left my handbag in the taxi. And what do I do? Identity card and everything had gone, and that was you needed that.
Yeah.
So I got into the hall, the nurse's home, and there was this starched sister standing there, and I said, "Left my handbag in the taxi," and she said, "Really, nurse?" Of course, she said. So what have I come to? She
Didn't help you at all.
no help at all.
Did you get it back?
What happened was that the taxi driver very kindly had seen I'd left it there and brought it straight back.
Right.
That's she was sort of saying, really nurse. The taxi driver arrived at my bag. I could have fallen around his neck.
Right. That's good.
From it was sort of the start. Anyway, everything went all right after that.
Wasn't there a story where you went for an interview and you had curlers in?
Yeah, that was when I went for an interview.
What was that?
Well, that was to be accepted there.
Yeah. What happened there?
Well, nothing actually happened except when the matron was talking to me, I put my hand up. You do your fiddle. Yeah, a bit unsure. Come on, I left a curler in. Yeah, there's only one, and I had a lot of hair in those days, and I don't think it showed.
Okay, correct.
It's a terrible feeling for matron to be interviewing me, and I could feel this curler in the back. Well, anyway, yeah.
So was it quite a strict kind of living situation, or did you feel sort of in London that you had kind of the freedom that you had back in the?
By present day standards, it was quite strict in that I might have just as well have been back at boarding school.
Really? Well, there was like a curfew, or you weren't allowed sort of boys?
There wasn't a curfew as such, but there was, as you went in the front door into the nurse's home, there was a little cubicle office with a glass front and a very fierce dragon behind it who clocked you in, made sure you were in. I think it was by 9:30.
Okay.
And knew your every activity, although there were a lot of nurses there. She kept a very strict eye on you. Yeah.
Okay.
Whether she had a kind heart, I don't know. No one ever discovered, I don't think. But she did make sure that we followed the rules.
Yeah. Could you have guests? But could you have alcohol? Could you?
No. You could have friends into the nurse's sitting room, which was on the ground floor.
Yeah.
Actually, we weren't allowed upstairs. You didn't. I mean, we did have alcohol, but that's encouraged. Used to smoke.
All right.
Did you have your own room there, or were you sharing a room?
You hoped you didn't have to share. At times during your training, you did have to share, and that was an absolute pain. Mostly, you were lucky enough to get a room to yourself. But what used to upset me was every time you went away for a holiday or for whatever reason, you had to pack everything up and go to a different room when you came back. So you would never really settle down.
No.
Well, you can. Forget. At the end of the training time, you went home for a week's holiday. On your annual holidays, obviously, you went away, and I don't know why I got so upset. It can't have been very frequent. But anyway, and sometimes you'd get a room in what they call the old part, and they were grim. Sometimes you didn't get a newish room, and that made life better.
Okay.
And at one time, once we got in there, there's this was another thing I should have mentioned. When I first started, there was no health service.
Right.
It started pretty soon after I got there.
When did the NHS start?
1947.
1947. Okay, a couple of years after the war?
I started in January 47, and the health service must have come in at the end of the month.
Okay.
It was very shortly afterwards.
Mm.
But once the health service had started, and it had sort of bedded down a bit, they changed the whole routine from 8 to 8 every day, except for 2 hours off in the morning or the afternoon. They changed it to shift work.
Okay.
And we liked that because you got much more lengthy time off. You work the same hours, as it worked out, but you got quite long lengths of time when you were off, and it was long enough for me, if I wanted to go home for the night.
Okay.
Back to family in Croydon. Yeah.
So it's very different to nurse training today, where you go off and do a degree and you study. You were really working from the day one on the wards.
Yes, you learned on the wards. Once your 6 weeks induction course was over, during which time you went for a couple of hours on the ward anyway,
right?
Just to get used to it,
right?
Yes. So, and the SRN at the end after 3 years was regarded as the equivalent of a degree,
right? And that's what you did.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
I didn't realise that. So you did three. So you 6 weeks of initial training, and then the next.
And on to the wards full time.
How do you have any early memories of sort of, failed procedures or like a bit embarrassing situations?
Numerous.
Yeah.
You were shifted around all the wards. You spent 3 months on the same ward, and then you changed to a different sort.
Right. Okay.
Medical, surgical, to whatever. You worked. Today, you have ward maids, so on. But in my day, we were called probationers, and we did that sort of work.
Right.
To start with. Then you were promoted a little bit to being what today would be a very low sort of nurse assistant.
Right.
But it was very much hands-on. It was, we did everything from washing the baby's nappies on the children's ward at night to doing quite, more advanced work as time went on.
Right. Okay.
And when you were promoted, they changed the belt that you wore.
Yeah.
The first belt you got after 2 years was a striped belt. Then I was allowed to clean the basins on the ward.
Yeah.
As well as, that's, you felt, really quite good being able to do that. You were away from the bedpan round a bit more.
And your hats, did they change? I think they had different hats for different...
No, they didn't. No, they just had they had quite nice uniforms, quite plain.
Right.
It's like karate a bit. You get different belts as you go.
Well, that's right. Yes, that's right. After you've done your 3 years and you got your SRN, you have a blue belt.
Right.
And then you do then a year to pay the hospital back for the money that they spent on your training. So it was all free.
Yeah.
Everything was free.
Right.
Okay, so you weren't paid in those 3 years?
Yes, you were.
You were?
But it was minimal. It was, to start with, it was £1 a week.
Okay.
Once you got on a bit, it was, I think it stayed at £1 a week somewhere. But once you got into your second year, I think it was, you got £12.
Right.
Okay.
Not a week, a month.
A month.
Right.
But just to put that in context, so £1 a week, what could you have got with £1 a week?
You used to get cigarettes, sometimes a paper, sweets if you wanted them, but you couldn't have all those. If you got a paper, you didn't have sweets.
But I guess you had food was covered, wasn't it, and accommodation.
Everything was covered.
Yeah. So it was just sort of £1. It was
just pocket money.
Yeah.
Okay. But what about sort of a train ticket home back to Croydon?
Yeah, I think my parents used to help me out.
Okay. That would be...
You still used to go on holiday with them. You can book your holiday, to suit you. And they just gave me pocket money.
So you were doing that, from 18 to 21, sort of when most people sort of in this day and age were in university. Yeah. And how was sort of social life in London back when you were sort of 18 to 21? Did you have much free time? Were you in the hospitals all the time? Did you?
No, I mean, yeah, you did have free time. Mostly the social life was within the hospital, but not a. You might have. When I first started, before the shift system came in, really got going, you would have 2 hours off in the day, and it was enough to go down to Joe Lyon's corner house.
Yeah. What's that?
Yeah,
Tea houses.
It's tea house.
yeah. You could get anything to eat from early morning to late at night. Anything.
Where was this? In central London?
Yeah, they were big restaurants on several floors. It was run by Joe Lyons, the cake makers, and they had an orchestra.
Right.
And you could go down and get a full breakfast at any time of the day you like, if that's what you wanted, or an ordinary meal, or cakes, or whatever.
Wow.
And usually a discount for nurses if you could bring some identity, So we used to go to the one on the corner of Oxford Street and Tottenham Court Road.
Gosh, okay. This is very, very central.
Yeah. If you had a boyfriend, sometimes you had the evening off if you worked all the whole day shift. It gave you time to go out of it, but it was usually once you got past the first year, it was usually a medical student or something. But you just do what was there to do.
Yeah. And the sort of people that you met socially, would they have been other people working like in the hospital? Okay, so sort of other nurses.
Yes, unless you had someone you knew before you went.
Yes.
Otherwise, it was hospital people.
Did you ever meet up with, at this point in time, was Auntie Lane at the Royal Academy of Music?
No. For some of the time, I can't remember which year she went out to Africa.
Okay, but potentially there was some crossover at the start, maybe? I'm just wondering if you sort of met up with her, because the Royal Academy of Music's not too far.
No, I think most of the time she must have been in Rhodesia, because I can't remember meeting her at all very much.
Right.
And at that time, there was no male nurses. Is that right?
There were very few, and there were as much as anything else. And one of the best times I had at hospital was when I got my SRN and I was doing my last year, and I was put in charge of the surgical outpatients. And working with me, just the two of us, was a male nurse technician. He sorted all the instruments, and he was good at organising. And between us, we had a good outpatient setup, although I say so. But I enjoyed it because I didn't have to work weekends. I could go home. And he was a good. He was a power of strength. Enjoyed that. You couldn't stay on unless you were invited. After the blue belt, after you got your SRA and you do your year, you owed the hospital. And after that, if you're invited, you get a red belt and you then start working your way towards being a ward sister.
Okay.
Right. Were you invited to stay on?
No. And I wouldn't have done anyway.
What does that? Okay, but what does that mean then? So you had to find another job, or
yeah, you left.
You left. Okay.
You left without anyone saying goodbye, other than your pals if they weren't working.
It's a waste of training.
Well, it's up to you to take it on to do something else. A lot of them went on and did midwifery or some other sort of nursing,
So they just didn't need, today they want, 50,000 nurses or something. They just didn't need the nurses back then, or?
No, I don't think they did.
Oversubscribed, maybe?
The need wasn't so great as it is now. Now you've got generations of people who have been nannied since birth and you need to go with every coffin.
So you would either just leave nursing directly, or you might do a branch like midwifery or something.
Well, it's up to you what you do.
But not many went on to extend their.
A lot of them got married, so went home for a bit, did an odd job, perhaps in a school nurse or something like that. Right. Got married and so on.
Right. Okay.
I went home and my father said, "Well, what now?" I said, well, if you would be kind enough to pay for it, I want to do a secretarial course, which I went and did. And as a result of that, I then went to work in the path lab at the Gordon Hospital in Eccles, the street that runs down beside Victoria Station.
Eccleston Street, the Eccleston Square is quite near where landed.
Oh, yeah. Yes.
So I worked in with the pathologist there and just did secretarial work.
Did you miss the nursing? That feels like quite a change from being on the wards to sort of being...
No, because I'd been at boarding school for 3 years and I'd been living in Purda, as it were, for other 4 years.
In the nursing?
Yeah. I was glad to just go and live at home. I just wanted.
Yeah.
My mother must have been horrified, I should think. But
so that was what, you've probably been about 22? You went back, yeah.
Interesting. So really nursing wasn't the career it is today, was it? You weren't really expected to continue it and make it into a career.
No.
Really get married.
And things are very, very different now. And because one of the reasons why now they need so many nurses, we can do so much more.
Yes, yeah.
Well, have nurses started doing more of the tasks that doctors might have previously done?
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to... we weren't allowed to give an injection. I think that was right, whatever sort of injection.
Yeah. Was that sort of bread and butter for nurses today, I'd imagine?
They take notes, don't they?
Yes. We certainly didn't do anything like that. Yeah. Well, if I finished until the time when I got married,
yeah,
not as much to add. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. This is where Barbara, our friend, comes in again.
From the close.
From the close.
Yeah.
As she was 21, having a party at home.
Mm.
And at the time, Grandpa had another girlfriend who was also a great friend of Barbara's. So they were invited to Barbara's 21st. But the girlfriend couldn't go.
Mm.
I was invited, of course. I've been staying with a friend called Jill. She lived up in Sheffield, that's right. And I had to come down to Barbara's party. And also invited was my cousin John Fever, who lived just in a road, just between our close and the next room but one. I'm getting muddled. John, or all the Fevers, lived in a second road off the main road from us.
Mm-hmm.
Not that means anything, but it was that near.
Close.
And when we were small, we could go up into our loft and they would go up into theirs and we could just see each other enough to send signals.
Yeah, but...
over the rooftops. So John Fever was there.
Right.
Grandpa was there. I was there.
John Fever, how old would he have been?
He was a little younger than me. He was about a year younger than me.
Okay, so he's 20, 21 years. Yep.
And he had a little open top sports car.
Okay. How could he afford that?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
That was a young age and a time when cars were expensive, I'd imagine.
Perhaps father thought out, I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, he had it. That was marvellous. So then I met Grandpa, obviously, and he and John and I left the party early, much to Barbara's mother's disapproval. Not too early, but earlier. I think we were the first to leave.
Okay.
Because we wanted to go off to the pub.
Yeah.
So John drove and Father and I sat on the where the hood comes down at the back.
Yeah.
So it was greatly exciting. And after that, Father took me to the cinema and that's how we went on. So that's pretty short. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, looking forward to hearing more about that with Uncle David.
Yes,
in the next session.
Right. Yeah. Yes, I might say he asked me to marry him after a fortnight, and I said no, I don't know you.
After 2 weeks.
Yes. End of that episode of my life.
Very good. That's a good, tantalising end to the first session.
Yeah.
Well, great. Thanks for that, Granny, and thanks for being here, Mum. You've been listening to Project Posterity by Philip Crumpler, available at philipcrumpler.com.